Welcome back to Know Happiness, a podcast where we seek, find, and sustain happiness in some of the most unusual places. Today, we're joined with Grace, a women's health practitioner, spiritual guide, and light language channel. Welcome, Grace.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to know you in a deeper way. I mean, we have friends and mutual friends, and we've been in ceremonies and different things and retreats, and so it's just I want to hear all about you.
Okay.
So let's just, to get started, tell me, this is kind of a grounding question.
Okay.
How do you define happiness?
How do I define happiness? I really think maybe what gives you peace of mind, and that you can achieve happiness like even in like the smallest little details, and really just I don't want to say content, because then sometimes I feel like maybe that's can be complacent, but when you're just really at ease and not wanting or striving for anything than like what you have at this moment, like just really being, I think that can be happiness.
I like that, because I think especially in our spiritual community, there's so much focus on you just keep healing. And there are moments that I feel like it's okay to be like, I'm good. Just as I am, that in this place, in this season in my life, I am good. There's nothing I need to be fixing or changing or correcting,
Yeah, I feel like I've been caught in that. Actually, recently I've been like, okay, because it's always like, oh, when's the next circle or when's the next thing? And I'm going to work on this thing and I've got to work on this thing. And it's just like, it gets really exhausting and sometimes nauseating, where I'm just like, okay, I'm done with this. And I can see why, people kind of get fed up with the new age spiritualism, because it's just like the next thing.
Right.
So
I think that's a beautiful definition for you in this season of your life, is to say, contentment is actually okay. I like the word feeling content.
I do too.
Ease. I don't associate anything negative with that word with happiness. So that's just my 2 cents. So let's dive into your journey in women's health and how that all began. But actually, let's just back up. I want to know a little bit about where you grew up, just those little background.
Okay. So I grew up in a small town called Cole Camp, Missouri. It's like on your way to the Lake of the Ozarks, down by the Lake of the Ozarks. It's like probably 2 hours from here. And so that is where I was raised, in like literally the middle of nowhere, off like 12 miles of gravel. And we lived in this little farmhouse, and then my parents built a house like up the street. And that's where I lived, and I got to have the most like wonderful like childhood. Like I had like that house that everyone wanted to go to, that house, and everyone wanted Grace's mom to take them to the field trip or like do the things, because I had that mom who was like the stay-at-home mom who like had the big Suburban and did all the things and brought the snacks. And I had and my dad was always gone traveling, but my mom really, she really made up for that. So and I'm an only child, so how that goes.
The apple of the eye.
And my parents were 41 when they had me, so they had me a little later in life. They really didn't like have children on their bingo card, think that was for them. And then here I came, just
surprise,
a little surprise. My mom thought she was going through menopause, and she went and like got some hormones from her provider, and then she got knocked up. So, thought she was going through the life change, and then she became a mother. So,
So that's even more exceptional that your mom was that involved and just so naturally good at it, when it really wasn't in her plan to be a mom.
Yeah. I think she always wanted to be a mother, and she had been pregnant in the 70s and had lost that baby like halfway through the pregnancy. And so she had to do fertility to get pregnant with that first baby. So she just assumed that like if she was going to have another baby, she was going to have to take medication or go through some kind of, route to make that happen, that it wouldn't just happen organically. So So I was kind of a little blessing, a little surprise, a little rainbow baby, whatever you want to call it. She's always like, Grace, you're just the best thing to ever happen to me. Aww. And she's the most wonderful woman, and really just, she's just that mom that everyone, always wishes they were like, oh, your mom is just so great. And she really is. So that was awesome, the childhood that I had. And went to a small Lutheran school, and and then went to nursing school after that in Warrensburg, and then moved.
I didn't know that.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's where I got my bachelor's, because it was like kind of close to home, but kind of, it was kind of like still a university, but had a very small town feel still, because Warrensburg is also very kind of small. And then after I graduated, I was like, oh, I'm going to move to the big city, try out the big city life. So I got a job at North Kansas City Hospital and moved up here. And
what area were you in nursing when you?
Oncology.
Okay.
So that's where I started, and I worked there for a year and a half. And really since high school, really since kindergarten, when they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, oh, I have to pick something. I was like, I just thought that like women, we all grew up to be moms and like wives, like, cause that's what my mom did. She was a homemaker. And so I was just like, it didn't ever occur to me that I would actually have to pick something to do. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, I'll be a nurse, like whatever. And then I'm like, oh, this is just what, like women just have to pick something as a backup plan just in case, and then, when you're young, you think like, oh, you meet your high school sweetheart and you get married, or you meet someone in college and you get married. And so like when I was young, I was just always like, I'm just buying time till I meet my soulmate. And then I'm like, okay, I'm 30 and I'm still out here providing for myself. And I'm like,
on the street.
I'm like, I just didn't think I'd make it this far having to provide for myself. I'm like, what is skewed? Like, so here we are providing for ourselves. Adulting.
Yeah.
Didn't think I was gonna make it this far alone, but it's okay. So then, and I was just like, okay, something medical or veterinarian or like whatever that looks like. And then when I was 15, my best friend got pregnant when we were 15 in high school. We lived in a small town, so I had a class of 69, and I would say there were probably like 7 of our classmates had gotten pregnant at some point in time in that realm.
In high school?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Small town. Kind of was
not much to do.
Was frequent. Yeah. But, so she got pregnant when we were 15. And of course, when you're 15, you're like, oh yeah, this isn't optimal, but this is like cool. And so we're like, you don't think of like the gravity of like, oh, we're really young, because you don't seem as young as you are when you are that young.
No,
that makes
you
sense.
think you've got it all figured out.
Yeah, like now when I look at 15, 16, 17-year-olds having babies, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're literally babies.
Yeah.
And so the father wasn't really super in the picture, and so I was kind of like her surrogate partner, and like I would take her to her appointments after school. We'd like leave school early and go to her appointments, and then go get Taco Bell afterwards. Like it was like a whole date kind of thing. And she was actually seeing a midwife, I believe. And I was like, okay, all right. And that was the first time I'd ever been introduced to like pregnancy or babies or what any of that was, because only child. I didn't have siblings, and our family lived really far away. So even like my cousins, like I never was introduced to babies. And so I was like, okay, all right, this is kind of cool. And I remember I took her to her appointment whenever. Actually, they sent her from that appointment to the hospital to go be induced. Now looking back, she had like preeclampsia, but at the time, we're like, oh, she's gonna have her baby. This is great. We weren't even thinking about the elevated blood pressure and like the protein in her urine and those kinds of things. We're like, oh, this is great.
Let's go time.
Let's go time. Let's do this, And so I like drove her over to the hospital, and she had like a 3-day long induction, and I sat with her through some of that, missed school, and had my geometry homework, and I'm sitting there chatting with her, and we're watching TV where she's got Cytotec in, like ripening up that cervix, and and then she had her baby, who is now like oh my gosh, I think she's about to be 15, 14.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even remember. But yeah, and she's like the most sweetest, lovely young woman. But yeah, so got to be there through that, and then also got to just kind of be like her surrogate partner, and got really experienced to babies. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is maybe something I want to do. And so I was like, I'm going to be an OB. And then I went to shadow at our local hospital, and they were like, well, we don't have, the OB isn't on today. It's the midwife that's on. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I shadowed this midwife, and I was like, okay, all right, I think that's what I'm going to do. And I remember hearing the word midwife for the first time, and it was just kind of like a remembering, like my whole, like, I was just like, I don't really even understand what a midwife is, but I just know that that's what I'm supposed to be. And it was just like, I don't have to know or understand. I just know that and me are like synonymous. And so that's what I'm supposed to do. And so
that's beautiful.
Never changed from that ever again of like, oh, maybe I'm going to do something different. It was just like, I heard the word and it was like midwife. That's what it is for me. So
to be a midwife, do you have to have a nursing degree before you can then get that certificate? I mean, what's the schooling for all of that?
Yeah. So it gets confusing because there's like, 3 or 4 different levels of midwives. And so that's where a lot of confusion lies because people don't understand that there is different kinds and what that all can mean. I'm a certified nurse midwife, which means that I have like the most education to be a midwife. And I'm the only kind of like certified nurse midwives are the only midwives that can also work in a hospital setting, birth center, home birth, like we can do whichever setting that we want to. And so you have to have a bachelor's of science in nursing first, and then you get your master's in midwifery. And it's kind of like medical school, like residency, like you have to catch like so many babies and you have to do so many hours. And so I had to catch 40 babies and do so many hours of like different kinds of visits and like, suturing and procedures and, different kinds of things like that. So you have like a little checklist and you have, you go through that. I think I was in midwifery school like during COVID, so that was all a very like tumultuous, weird time. So a lot of things were getting delayed, and we were doing a lot of things virtually, and so it was really interesting. My school was mainly online. I went to Frontier Nursing University, which is in Kentucky, and they're the oldest and they're the first midwifery school in the United States. So they have like the oldest and the lore behind them, and they're on this like beautiful campus in like literally the Kentucky hills, like middle of nowhere, because that's where the midwives were like riding horseback to like go, visit the families. And so there's a lot of like history there. But yeah, so went through them, and it was COVID. So you're supposed to go to Kentucky like a couple of times and like learn how to do certain things. And we were supposed to go for a week to do all of our skills stuff before we started clinicals, and obviously COVID, so we couldn't go. So we did everything virtually. And so that was interesting to like learn how to catch a baby online.
Sure.
And like learn how to suture online. We all had like our beef tongues and we're like virtually like learning to suture. Like it was interesting, and insert IUDs on our little plastic models and all of that stuff. So it just looked a little different. And then you got to go obviously practice all of that in real life. But yeah, so it was a little different.
Well, as a former nurse, I was a nurse too. I have a bachelor's in nursing. And really, until you physically do something, like you can sit in a classroom, you can have all the book knowledge, but it is really the hands-on practice that makes you feel confident, that putting in your first IV, all these things, it's like your trembling hands.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, I can suture on this car wash sponge all night, but I'm like, it's going to be a little different when I'm like between someone's legs, like real time
and
doing
they're
this.
like, ah!
Yeah. And they don't have an epidural, and you're like shooting them with lidocaine in their most intimate space, and they're like freaking out. It's a whole different game.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of gives me some background as to how you got into, and I love this word, midwifery.
Yes. A lot of people are like, midwifery. And I'm like, either way.
Yeah. Well, and I also think it's really cool that this was a remembering for you. We talk a lot about this in this show, that like we really are just coming back to the things that we, were born into this world already knowing, a remembrance. And so that's really cool. This ancient remembering for you. Thousands of years ago, you could have been doing this. In fact, you probably were.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, done a lot of sessions with different kinds of like healers or intuitives or things like that. And I've been told numerous times, they're like, you've been a midwife in almost every lifetime. They're like, this is like your 7th or 9th lifetime coming back as a midwife. And they're like, usually you keep coming back to try to right the wrongs of like the past of like, you witnessed a lot of traumatic births, and I had a lot of traumatic births myself in past lives. And so they're like, you keep coming back to try to right the wrong, but like this lifetime isn't necessarily really about that. I think this lifetime is really me learning to midwife in other ways rather than just like, because the word midwife means with women. That's what it means. And so I think this life is really about me learning more of like, how can I be a midwife and show up in other realms, and how can I midwife women in other ways? Also, yes, in the birth space, but also.
Well, expand on that for me, if you would.
Okay.
Lean into that a little bit.
Okay. I mean, I just adore women, and I love sitting with them in any and all of life's phases. And I think, like, yes, birth is one of the biggest transformations that a woman will go through. But there's also so many other seasons. There's, you know, infertility seasons, there's menopause, there's perimenopause, postmenopause, all the things. There's, you know, chronic sexual health disorders, you know, past traumas, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can sit with women in. You can energetically like midwife women, or spiritually midwife them, and be with them in other capacities by just showing up and being there and being with them. So I think I just like exploring other ways that I can still be a midwife, but maybe not have to be like, you know,
like laying down the sword a little bit.
Yeah. A little more of rewriting, like, okay, Grace, you don't have to keep coming back to try to right these wrongs. Like, that's kind of complete. Now it's like, let's explore another way that, you know, you can midwife.
Well, I think that's really beautiful. And at your retreat, because I had the honor of attending the Tantra Women's Retreat, and it's just very evident and obvious to me how deeply passionate you are about the healing of women collectively. And I just want to tell you, I just think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope you feel that.
Yeah, I'm working on receiving all those compliments, and thank you.
So I know that you have kind of had some challenges with your own physical body, lichen sclerosis. And how did do you want to talk about that journey at all? And like, does that somehow kind of tie into this helping women with their bodies? And
yeah, for sure. Your own life gives you the most like interesting lenses, which then you can, you know, take, and, you know, that whole thing of like turning your, your poison into medicine. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's like, you know, the biggest thing and the most important thing that we can do. And so in my early 20s, I was almost 22, I think, and like midway through 21. I had some, you know, obviously I do so wholeheartedly believe that any physical ailment like starts first in the energetic realm. I think that there's something going on energetically that then, if left, you know, unattended, can then manifest physically. And so looking back now on where I was at in my tumultuous early 20s, there was a lot of things there. And it was just kind of, I was laying the perfect foundation for, you know, disease to find me, essentially. And so I ended up, I had went through like a long term, like I had been with someone for 7 years, and we had this very like on and off, like toxic relationship as one does in their younger years. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, when that finally ended, then found myself in some other situations that weren't optimal, and was just like, not super in a good energetic or emotional space. And then one day I ended up with this like very raw, like painful, like tender spot on my vulva, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what is this, you know? And I was going to all these doctors, and they're like thinking, oh, you have STIs, or you have all these things, or, you know, they're like throwing all these things out there. No one really knows. And that kind of just continued for like a year of like, I had this spot that like wasn't going away, and it had morphed into like any kind of touch or friction in that space, like that skin just couldn't handle it. So lichen sclerosis is like characterized as like potentially autoimmune. Like there's just so much inflammation in that area. And then that can lead to scarring and narrowing of the tissues and things like that. And so any type of friction or touch would like result in like a paper cut like slice. And so if you can imagine your vulva, your most intimate space, and your anal area, very intimate spaces, being covered with these like tiny paper cuts that like bleed and, you know, sting and burn. And every time you walk, you know, it's like, a little like slice between your legs,
Yeah.
or if you like bend over or do anything like that. And so then obviously you're thinking intimately, like friction with sex or things like that. Like that tissue, my tissue just couldn't like hold up, and it would just like slough off and bleed. And it was like the most painful thing ever. Wouldn't wish anyone on it. And lichen sclerosis manifests differently for different people. Like some people have more burning or, itching, or, it can manifest in different ways. I didn't really have like burning and itching. I just really had the skin tearing, which is not optimal.
Sure.
You haven't lived till you've had a skin tear on your clitoris. Let me tell you what.
I've had them many a time.
Oh my gosh.
As you're sitting here talking, I'm like, I wonder if I have that. I'm not even kidding you.
I mean, 1 in 80 women.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more common than what you think. And a lot of times it goes like undiagnosed, or a lot of people, it gets like misdiagnosed as yeast or like reoccurrent yeast. Like doctors are just like, oh, yeast, just keep throwing.
It's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I swear to God.
So there's a lot of, misconception around diagnosing, and it takes people, the average length of time that it takes someone with LS to get an appropriate diagnosis is like a year. Or even longer, especially, depending on where you're at. And if you're even, a lot of doctors aren't even familiar with it. And there's kind of a gap between like OBs and dermatology, because like there's lichen sclerosis and lichen planus that can exist like on the body. And so like dermatologists will work with that, but they won't work with the genital area. But then OBs will only work with the genital area. But then there's just like this, there's definitely like a gap situation there. And, mainstream medicine is mainly like, here's your steroid ointment, like, apply this, twice a week for the rest of your life, and, good luck kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there are like procedures that you can go do that, have come out and things like that. But there's definitely not a lot of like mainstream medicine that's using like integrative approaches to healing. It's more of like, here's procedures and here's steroid ointment, and that's kind of where you're at. Thankfully now they're like incorporating more pelvic PT, because that's like foundational. But yeah, so it's kind of one of those little sneaky hidden ones. Most women are like postmenopausal, or young children like are usually like the most primary age groups that are affected. So that's why me at 21, like that wasn't even like a thought, because they were like, it's got to be all these other things. And so I had all kinds of stuff, and they were like prescribing me like antidepressants and gabapentin and all these kinds of things to try to help with like the nerve pain, and all that just made me really tired and like hate my life even more. And all kinds of things. And then finally I did see a doctor up here that was associated with KU, and she did a punch biopsy, which is also not super fun.
Yes, I've had one of those.
And then that came back with lichen sclerosis. And then, so then I was like, okay, cool. Like we have a diagnosis. This is great. Let's run with this. And, doctor really downplayed it. Like, okay, here's the steroid ointment. Like, you got this. And I'm like, great. We have the steroid ointment. Like it's going to fix it. Everything's going to be good. And I like go home and start doing my own research, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is bad. I'm like, this isn't great. Obviously you go like down worst case scenario rabbit holes on the internet. But lichen sclerosis, if not treated, can be really serious, where women have lost like all of their architecture, like their labias, clitoris, everything like fuses over and scars over, and they literally like, it just looks like a Barbie. Like there's no identifiable structures.
Wow. And
some women will have to have surgery to keep their like vagina or like urethra open and things like that. And so it can be like really severe if just completely left to its own devices. And then, I get on these like Facebook groups to try to like find some,
camaraderie.
And I'm like, more traumatized by being in these groups, because, there's all of these women in there that, are sharing their hearts, but it's so sad. And I was like, this can't be my life. I'm like, I've got a lot of years left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't let this be my life of, there's women that are like, I haven't been intimate with my husband in 10 years or 12 years, or, there's, they can't have any kind of intercourse or touch or whatever that looks like for them, or they've had to have, or them and their husbands have agreements where, he's allowed to go have, relations elsewhere, but they're still, there's just, I was like reading all of these like horror stories, and I was just like, okay, I'm literally 21 years old, 22 years old at this point. I'm like, this can't end up being like my trajectory. And so then I'm doing more Googling and I like find this doctor in LA who at the time was, which he still does, but at the time it was newer. And it was called stem cell lift is like what he was like coining it as for lichen sclerosis specifically. And so, and you know, it was there wasn't super a lot of data behind it, but, or at least like mainstream medicine is recognizing. But I mean, he had a lot of like success stories through his website and things like that. And I was like, well, I have nothing else left to lose. So, you know, I'm going to go do this. And so at that point I had to tell my parents, because at this point I hadn't like told them all this stuff was going on. I was just like for the last year going to all these doctors and doing all this stuff kind of on my own. And I hadn't really like told anyone about it. And then to tell someone about it, they're like, what? They're like, you know,
did you feel embarrassed? Was it, or just overwhelmed?
I mean, there's like a lot of shame that goes with it. And, you know, I'm, you know, young and all my friends were going out and partying and drinking and they're having, you know, one night stands and, you know, having all this fun time. And I'm over there like gonna go home and slather myself in ointment and sit in my borax bath and freaking, you know, just have my own time. And, you know, there's like some self-sabotage that comes in with that. You know, I was, you know, drinking a lot and just like making poor decisions, you know, anything to feel, you know, loved and, you know, just even if it was for 15 minutes and I would have to nurse my, you know, genitals back to health later, you know, it was just like anything to feel like maybe I was worthy even for a small amount of time. And so, yeah, we lived at Power and Light for quite some time. I was like on a first name basis with the guy who ran the mechanical bull at PBR.
Oh my gosh.
We were buds. And oh my gosh, like I would go ride this mechanical bull and like be wearing like jean shorts and just like totally wreck my like undercarriage.
Like, ouch.
Like it would, but you know, anything for the plot or the story.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, so that was kind of where I was at. And then, so I tell my mom and my mom's like, she's like, okay. And, you know, this is expensive. And so we go to LA and we have this procedure and, you know, they like take some of your blood, centrifuge out your platelets and inject all of that down there, that platelet rich plasma.
Yeah.
And then they
like
did
a PRP.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then the stem cell lift is just, you know, they did like liposuction on my sides and like took some fat out and then like centrifuged out the fat cells and then introduced all of that into that area. Which is also not very fun.
No.
Really painful.
Yeah.
And then it swells up and it's like huge and you're like, what did I do to myself?
Sure. Like, is this going to stay
I
like this?
I was like it's unrecognizable and I'm just like, oh no. And of course, like my doctor here was like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Like, you know, that's experimental. Like there's no data behind it. Like the data supports the clobetasol and, you know, all these things. And I'm like, okay, I know, but you're not really offering me a whole lot here.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 of those procedures in my early 20s and spread out, I think like over 6 months each at a time. And so I don't really know if that like helped or not. Like it was, you know, I was still like drinking all the time and living a very, you know, I was working nights and I was just like, my lifestyle was also chaotic. I was eating whatever I wanted and all of that. And then finally that all went on for like 5 or 6 years. And then when I was like 26, I was like finally in a space where I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to really like dive into this. And, you know, I'd tried everything else under the sun and had kind of tipped into more like alternative integrative medicine with like, you know, acupuncture. I did have this woman who was like, who did like cranial sacral therapy and chakra healing and things like that. So she was like my first little tiptoe into like, you know,
popping the spiritual
more like
cherry
woo-woo things, which I've always been out there. But, you know, she was really the first one that I saw who was like, you know, a healer type person.
And that was at 26.
Yes, I think so. Well, I'd been seeing her, I think, since like probably 23 or 24. I saw her for several years before I was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to, you know, dive into this. And then that's how I found someone else who just kept popping into my awareness. She was like in my People You May Know on Facebook. And what was interesting is my chiropractor, like a few years before that, had given me this girl's name and number and was like, hey, like, I think she could really help you. Like, she's had a lot of autoimmune stuff. She's like healed herself through like diet and energy and medicine and things like that. Like, I think you should just reach out to her. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And I like just put her like a note on my fridge and left it there for 2 years, and there it sat. And then finally one day I was like, all right, I'm just gonna give this girl a call. And so I did, and I did a discovery call with her, and she was just like, oh yeah, she's like, your body can heal, we've got this, like no problem. And I was just like, okay, this girl, She's the first one to ever tell me that. She's the first one to ever look at me and say, hey, your body can heal.
And what did she do? She was
so she was an FNP, family nurse practitioner, but she had her own kind of integrative functional medicine practice.
Is this Jen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, who I work for now. And so she was just starting out at that point. Like her office was in, her house and all things like that. And so I went and saw her for my first appointment, and I just still remember sitting there in this big green chair, like crying, telling her my sob story of all these autoimmune conditions I've like developed, and I had a whole collection of them, and the main one being LS and all this stuff. And she just like looks at me and she's got like this smile on her face, and I can tell she's like not trying to laugh, but she's just like, because obviously I get a little carried away in my storytelling. And she's like, I'm telling her about my bull riding experiences and, can't wear jeans and everything. And she's just like, you're fine. She's like, we've got this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I did her 12-week program, which was like kind of modeled after the medical medium and some of his stuff. And so, it was all these dietary changes, cutting all this stuff out. And before then, I was not in a place to go like gluten-free and dairy-free.
Well, in your early 20s,
and like stop drinking alcohol and like, take up yoga and meditate.
Right.
I was like, I feel like early 20s now maybe do those things, but like not then.
I didn't find it till I was 40. So you're way ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So I like trudged up my whole life, and I did her 12-week program, and I was having like all kinds of like detox symptoms. I was having like lumps in my breasts and my armpits and like just all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, is this okay?
Is this normal?
And she's like, yeah, it's fine. It's just the toxic die-off. Keep doing it. And I'm like, okay. Like drinking the celery juice every morning and the heavy metal detox smoothies and doing all these things. And then I remember at one point, like my vulvar skin's like coming off in like sheets. It was like a sunburn, and I was like pulling it off in sheets, and I was like, I don't think this is normal. And she's like, it's fine, just keep doing it. And I was like, okay. And underneath that was like this purple new skin, and I was like, oh, it's like fresh baby skin. And it was really beautiful, and like really just taught me that my body can heal. And when I am living in alignment and eating what I should be and avoiding, inflammatory things, trigger things, really it's a lot of stress and emotional responses for me too, and sleep, which, my sleep is all over the place. But whenever I'm really living in alignment, like I don't have any flares at all, and I can have like a very normal sex life, and it just like, it's
That's
really
incredible.
Yeah.
So really, you owe her just a massive amount of gratitude. I mean, you work with her now.
Yeah. Which is so interesting and lovely that now I get to look at people who come and sit across from me, and they're, crying, and they've had all this chronic disease, and they're just like, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything else. Like, what do I do? And, I'm just kind of like, okay, are you ready to rip your life up? And kind of like, and kind of get to walk them through the same thing that I, got to go through. So that's really fun. I get really excited when I see people, and it's all connected. They come in with all these autoimmune things and all these stories, and I'm like, at the bottom of the well, it's literally all the same. And it's literally like, we've got to cut out the inflammation, and we've got to do all these, things, and, nervous system health, and, really look at the energetics of things, and it's really all the same in most cases. And it's just like really special to be able to like give people hope and be like, it's going to be hard work, and I still fall off the bandwagon.
Sure.
And I still have my filthy martini with 3 blue cheese olives and 10-layer carrot cake on occasion, because I didn't come here to suffer.
Yeah.
But it's really beautiful to be on the other side of that too, but also still I'm always in it. You're never fully arrived, you're never fully healed or anything. And my body will talk to me and send me nudges and signals when I'm living out of alignment, or maybe, it can even be a person in your life, or like a sexual partner, or something that you're exposing yourself to in your environment that you're like, okay, my body's telling me that maybe something here is not in alignment. Let me take an inventory and see like maybe what I think this could be related to.
Wow, I think that is a beautiful revelation. And as women, I mean, I'll speak for myself personally, I have ignored that my whole sexual life, knowing things were wrong, knowing they didn't feel good in my body, but like powering through,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's an incredible story. And I love that you now get to help other people, like if the whole point of all of this, I think, and our suffering and the experiences we go through is to go help other people, to share that wisdom. You know, like I don't feel like I don't have a choice but not to do that, you know. And how that has looked has been different. Like I look back at my life and, you know, I've been a healer in some capacity from the nursing, then it was massage therapy, and then it was energy healing. And now, you know, it's like, at least it wasn't like I was an accountant and then a waitress and then, you know, they were all in the same lane.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like the more education, the more trainings, the more, like, I'm like, ooh, that's another remembrance. I've done that. Like, I'm maybe going to step into that for a little while. I mean, and it's just, I love that we don't get pigeonholed into any one thing, that we keep getting to expand and grow, and that it's all centered around helping other people like live this amazing life and get peace.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also a collector of different things, like dabbling in everything. And then I'm like, Grace, are we ever going to actually like use these things that we're collecting? And then I'm like, I mean, I do use them, but just not like maybe in a capacity where I'm solely like a yoga teacher or, you know, Reiki or like whatever, you know,
right.
They're always there and you can use them and, you know, they come out when they're needed. But
yeah. And I feel like that too. I mean, I got my yoga teacher training and didn't teach a yoga class, didn't have any intention of teaching it. I've just now, here 3+ years later, started to teach it. You know, same with like, you know, I'm finally doing some Reiki clients, just these little things. Like, I think for a long time, for me, it was, you know, I'm not ready.
Impostor syndrome.
Yeah, I don't know enough.
I live there.
Yeah.
I try not to.
In my backyard.
We're very comfortable.
Yeah. And I'm finally like, you know, you really only need to know a little bit more than whomever, you know, like I don't have to be a master at any of these said things, you know, if my intention is pure.
Yeah.
And all I'm trying to do is to help somebody, then really, why not?
Yeah. No, I've had to look at that a lot because I'm always like, well, who am I to help these people? And I get caught in the trap of like, oh, I can't do that until I have that certification, or I can't do that until I know more about it. And, you know, who am I to do that? I just, you know, and I've had to look at that a lot. And I'm like, okay, Grace, who are you not to? Like, people show up and they ask for your help, or, you know, and there's a reason. And they're not necessarily looking for you to have the answer. They're really just, I mean, what I'm finding over and over again, like women just want someone to look at them and see them and hear them and talk to them like they're a real person. And you don't have to have all the answers. They're really just looking for someone to sit with them in whatever they're going through, and at least someone to be a partner in that and be like, hey, like sometimes I'll be like, I don't really have the answer. I don't really know what the answer is for this, but I'm willing to sit with you and we can like figure out what it is. And if I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does, or I will like go seek it out, or, you know, get you to someone who does.
Yeah.
Like, you know, maybe I'm not the person, but maybe I'm just more of a connector piece for them to get to where they need to go to someone else, or to open them up to a new way of thinking or a new modality of healing, or, you know, I don't necessarily have to have the answers.
Yeah. Well, and I think as women, there's just nothing more beautiful than a relationship with another woman, because men, let's face it, they want to fix. God love them. God bless them. But, you know, it's like we don't always need to have the solution and answers for everything. Sometimes we just need to process. We just need to say it out loud. And to have another woman just sit and hold that space and just listen is priceless. But yeah, I get, you know, circling back to the imposter syndrome. That has definitely been something I have been challenged with and continue to work on. And this show has been a lot of that, like, especially with social media and it not like taking off, and it's like, you know, taking it so personally, and it's like, oh, they just don't want to hear anything I have to say. And, you know, I have to be reminded that it's the message and not the messenger, and that if somebody's judging me because my hair's out of place, or I have a zit, or I look fat, or whatever story I'm telling myself, they're not my audience.
That's true. Yeah. I'm really good at spinning stories. We're really good at spinning our own stories. I'll have a whole thing like, you know, formulated in my mind. And someone will be like, that's literally not happening at all. I'm like, okay, because I thought you hated me and were conspiring against me.
Right. What is that saying? Like, you would worry less of what others thought of you if you realized how seldom they do.
Oh my gosh, I know. And then like, the way that people see you, that's also really interesting. Like when people say things and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting that I show up in that way, that's the interpretation that you have of me. I'm like, wow, I would just love to see myself for a day through another lens, and then maybe I would have more grace for myself.
Well, it's interesting because Alex was here and we were talking about, the artwork, and it got brought up, and I don't know if you've seen this guy on TikTok, but he's an artist, and he keeps his back to these two subjects, and he's not seen them. And they've not met each other, so they're complete strangers. And he has them describe themselves to him, and so he draws that. And then he has them describe the other woman that's sitting there, so it's two women. And the portrait of the woman, like me describing what you look like, looks identical. And then when we describe ourselves to this artist, it doesn't look like us.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow. Like, why is it that we have such a hard time seeing ourselves the way others do?
Yeah.
Like, man, you would never doubt yourself if you saw yourself the way I do. Like, it's true. I think you're just this, like, magical, light, funny, vivacious, like, fun-loving gal.
Even this morning, I pulled out the questions for this thing, and I just read the top, and it was like, Grace, women's health practitioner, spiritual guide, and light language channel, and I was like, I'm not any of that. I'm like, am I really those? I was like, I'm not those things, and I had to sit with myself, and I'm like, okay, Grace, bring it down. And I'm like, maybe I can cancel. Maybe I can make something up.
I'm starting to get a fever, summer fever.
And then I'm like, okay, Grace, you can do this. You need to do this. Once again, stepping out of my comfort zone and making myself do things that I would normally shy away from. So,
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you said yes, and that you didn't get a mysterious summer flu.
For the opportunity.
So let's talk about light language. It seems like collectively it's starting to catch on. More and more people, and maybe it's that more and more people are becoming brave enough to use it. Maybe it's, by one person starting, it awakens it in another. I don't know, but explain to people who don't know what light language is, what you think it is, and how it's affected and become part of your life.
Well, it's definitely never something that I thought that would be part of my identity. And I really didn't even know what it was until about a year and a half ago. I think I think someone did it in a medicine ceremony, and I was like, the first time you hear it, you're like, what?
Yeah.
And you're kind of it's so jarring that you're almost kind of I was kind of ooh. I was like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I need that to stop.
Make it stop.
I was like, I don't know what that is. And then my mind goes back to, I grew up very religious. And so I'm going back to oh my gosh, this woman's speaking in tongues. What kind of devil works
the devil.
I'm I don't need that. I'm like, whoa. And then, your rational mind is trying to figure it out. And then once you can if it goes on long enough and you get past the rational part, you're like, okay, all right, that's actually kind of beautiful. Okay. And you can lean into it. And so I had heard it the one time, and I never really thought of it really again. And then, that's a really long story of how mine came online. That's a whole other podcast just for itself. Definitely worthy of one. But then when it came online for me, I was literally just what is this? I was like, I didn't ask for this. And I was like, I don't want it. Take it back. Return to sender. And my whole life, I was like, oh, I would really love a spiritual gift. People who have have really great intuition, and they do have visions or just knowings of things years in advance. I'll just be it'll just come in and I'll be okay, I don't know. I'm going to go there someday. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how I'm going to be introduced to these people or how that's going to happen, but it just does. And eventually it will. And I'm like, wow, I'm literally magical.
Yes, you
or
are.
just, it still surprises me every time. And so, always we know great, amazing, spiritual people in our community, Christy or, other people like that. And I look at them and I'm like, wow, they have such amazing spiritual gifts. Like I want something special like that. And then I get this and I'm like, I don't want it. This is weird.
Why does it have to be this
like
one?
Where to get this? I don't want this. And so when it came on for me at first, it was just kind of like undertoned, like breathy noises. And then when I like look back, I'm like, wow, I used to do this all the time as a kid, and I think a lot of us used to speak like in make up languages when we were kids, but you just think that's like, oh, that's a kid thing. Yeah. And then, I have done it as an adult, but I just always thought like, I'm a little eccentric. And I'm an only child, have always talked to myself, like, so, rapping off some random tunes and noises and stuff just like seemed like part of my like behavior. And so I was always just like, But then I attended this light language transmission circle or something. I don't remember really what it was called in Texas last September. And that's when it like just came on, and it was like so unavoidable, and I was like, okay. And after I left that retreat, it was like word vomit. I couldn't not do it, and so I was just doing it all the time to myself. And then it was like, then I was starting to like record it, and then I got brave enough to like send my recordings to some people, and like mine really comes through as like lullabies, like they sound like little lullabies, and then like,
it's beautiful. Like it literally is just so melodic and soothing, and I love it. Just so you know.
Thank you.
This said spiritual gift that you want to return to
and
sender.
What's weird is I'm not a singer at all. Like
seriously,
like normally, like if I were to rap out like a basic song, it would definitely be like tone deaf and not like it's not. And it's like whenever you're doing light language, light language is really, I look at it as like a prayer or just like connection with your highest self. And it's just a way for me to like get in my body and just, I'm no longer thinking or doing anything. I'm just like really just transmuting. And it's become kind of more of like a nervous system reset for me too. If I'm like upset about something or just had a really hard conversation or birth or, like whatever's going on in my life, and then I'll just do it as second nature, and then I instantly feel myself be better and sometimes or feel better. And if I have like a headache or something, I'll even just like put my hand on my head and do it, and it'll relieve it, it'll go away. And I've even started like using it in births sometimes. Obviously I always check in with like the client's higher self to ask if it's permission, if I have permission to use it. And I haven't had anyone's higher self say no, but keeping that open that someone's could.
Sure.
And so I've used it a few times in birth whenever there's been situations that I'm kind of like, don't super love this, what's going on? Or maybe we're like thinking of a potential like transfer situation, or maybe something a little hairy, or I'm just like, or a mom's really struggling and I'm like just wanting to give her, a little extra zhuzh or something. And so I'll just do it quietly, like, to myself. And in every situation that, I've used it, the situation has resolved, or, and I'm just like, there is some, really divine like healing, I think, behind it. And light language looks all like different things. Like some people speak it or sing it or dance or write or paint or, whatever. It can look like so many different things. And I think it really is the universal language. Like I think light language is the universal language. And it's love and it's frequency. And I think that, it's no different than using Reiki or, other energy healing modalities to yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you are stepping into that. I had no idea you were starting to use it in your midwifery.
Just quietly.
Yeah.
I haven't done it, out loud. But what's actually really interesting in the last like couple of weeks, I get like just these random tunes and they'll just like come in and I'll just like have to sing it ad nauseum until I figure out who it belongs to, like who that song is for. And then I'll either share it or at least record it and then maybe be like, okay, maybe I'll share it with them someday. But it's really interesting. It's like I'm singing this melody over and over again until like it's made aware to me like, oh, this belongs to you. And so I had a birth a couple of weeks ago and I was singing the song over and over and over again. And then I was like, oh, this song is for that baby. Like and it was such like a beautiful like lullaby. And I was like, this is literally for him. And I got like this knowing of just like a past life situation where the mother and father were like royalty. They were like a king and queen situation. And they had hired me as their midwife.
Wow.
And I lived like in this castle with them, and I was their midwife and also their wet nurse. And so I spent a lot of time with this baby and singing this lullaby that I had like formulated like lifetimes ago. And I was like, it was the same song, and it was his lullaby that I had made for him in like another lifetime. And it was the same baby, like the same soul, like, and it was just like this weird knowing, like that whole thing just came into me, and I was like, wow, okay. And me and this mom are good friends, so I like felt comfortable sharing this with her. Normally, like I wouldn't share things like that just because you never know how people might take it. And, you know, also you don't want to say something to someone and, you know, maybe it's not true for them.
Sure.
And so I shared it with her and sent her the light language lullaby, and she was just like, oh my gosh, she's like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And it was really special. And I was like, yeah, this is literally his lullaby. Like it just felt, and there was nothing, like it was just true. It was like, this is true.
So being a midwife, you're bringing a lot of life into the world, right? And is there like any kind of energetic like exchange or something that you're like a prayer or something that you give to these babies as they're being born?
I think it's more of just what I've really, like, obviously I know this, but what I've really just been trying to lean into lately is like literally everything is energy. And I think babies choose the energy that they want to be like born into or that they want there when they come in. And so I don't think that it's ever any mistake of like, you know, what provider you get in labor or what, you know, what OB, what midwife, whatever, or where the setting is. Like, I think it's all like very divinely laid out, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be having the experience you're supposed to have. And so I don't take it lightly that like I'm there for a reason and I'm at the births that I am like for a reason. And I really love this term, like, came to me like a couple of weeks ago. Well, didn't come to me, but I read it on this little thing, and I was like, oh, it just really resonated, of being like a threshold keeper. And I really love that because I'm, you know, sometimes, you know, yes, midwifery is my day-to-day job, and I get caught up in like, oh, you know, getting up at 3 a.m. to go to a birth, or, you know, like going to do all these home visits or doing things like that. And sometimes when it's your job, you forget like how special it is, and that like what I get to do every day is not what everyone else gets to do every day. And I get to be in all these like beautiful like situations, like where, I mean, women are birthing themselves, and I mean, women are amazing. Like, they are the only bridge on this earth between, you know, they're the only bridge for unborn souls to come in. Like we are the threshold.
Yeah.
Like, people should throw us a parade every day because like we're walking thresholds between like the unseen and the seen. And we're like literally, you know, the bridge of the unborn, which is like amazing. And so I love the idea of like that I get to hold that space, and I just get to make sure that that space is safe for that little soul to come in, to come earthside, and to be the threshold keeper between the seen and the unseen, and, you know, the spiritual realm and, you know, our realistic 3D realm, whatever you want to call it. And when I really tune into it that way, I'm like, wow, this is so special that that's what I get to do. And I just, you know, being a midwife is really a lot of sitting on your hands, watching and waiting, and only intervening when needed. And so, you know, back in the old days, you think of like the granny midwives that sat in the corner and just like knitted and, you know, but it's the energy, it's their energy. And then that woman labored so much better just knowing that there was someone there in the corner. Holding the space, even though maybe she wasn't doing anything. And so that's what midwifery is all about, is knowing when to intervene, knowing when you're needed, knowing when that mom needs a little extra support, but also honoring that this is her journey and that she's going to go to those depths, and she's the only one who can go there, and you can be there to remind her of her power and to bring her back maybe when she loses herself a little much or needs to ground. But that's what I love about it, is it's really just reminding this woman of her power, and watching that unfold and her step into that, and just keeping the space safe, whether that's, you know, energetically or physically or
all of the above,
you know, making sure that, you know, her support people all have, you know, that there's no one who's maybe throwing off the birth space, or that the environment is safe and that her and her baby are safe, and, you know, intervening if needed or if asked, or if I feel like it's, you know, relevant to. But like, that's the beauty of midwifery, is just, you know, keeping everything.
Well, And, you know, in the same breath, this is like one of the happiest, most magical moments in a couple's lives. And on the flip side, could be like the most devastating when a baby is stillborn, or, you know, or there's some genetic issue that's going on, you know. So how do you handle when it isn't a magical moment and it's really difficult and something tragic occurs?
Yeah. And that's just the duality of life. Like you wouldn't, we can't have the happy and all the feel good if we hadn't had, the depths of sorrow, because you wouldn't be able to differentiate and know, we have to have that duality there, and the cycle of life. And unfortunately, death or, unfortunate circumstances can be part of that. But that's also, the part of the midwife of being with women through all those phases. And so, just being what she needs, and, also taking care of yourself in those situations, but also, just really walking with her the best way that you can. And, and just knowing that that's, kind of, that is part of midwifery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of circling around then to what is like a day in Grace's healing practice? Like, what do you do for your rituals? What do you do to take care of yourself on a day to day? Or, I mean, I'm sure it evolves and changes and waxes and wanes, but.
Yeah, I could definitely do better with my rituals. I'm not super good at routine, because like when you're a midwife, routine is hard, because at any given moment, you might have to leave or, or go do something, or something unexpected pops up. And so, really, like, the sun is like a huge thing for me, getting the sun on my face. I try every morning to just go outside and get the sun on me. Or like, if I've been inside all day, like I'll go, there's a park like just up the road from my apartment, and I spend a lot of time there, just like getting on the earth, being in the sun. I feel like that's like the thing that I do the most. I'm doing this integrative sex coaching program, and there's a lot of somatic exercises in there. And so those are actually very helpful when you do them. God forbid. And so like having those in my back pocket, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to stroke my arm for 5 minutes or hold this object in my hand and, whatever. But they really are very helpful. So doing things like that, and some of them you can do like, out in public, and like people don't even know that you're doing them, like orienting to a resource, like kind of just looking around and really like observing your environment, or like giving yourself kind of more of like a little stable hug here, just doing things like that to kind of bring you back into the body. I feel like a lot of times I get so up in my head and my monkey mind, and I'm like lost, because I'm Gemini, so I'm air. So I'm always like up here, and then I've got to really consciously bring myself back down here.
What would you say to someone who's just kind of embarking on their spiritual journey and they're just getting started? Do you have any advice for someone?
I would say the two most helpful things for me was like community. So I would say like finding some like-minded individuals that you can talk about these things to, or like what's coming up for you, and can kind of help guide you. And then I also feel like your intuition, like tune in, because you already know what you need, even if you don't want to admit that you know what you need.
Not like someone sitting here.
Yeah, like you don't already know what you need to do.
Yeah.
But you already know what feels good. And I've found that like, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably right. Like if something just comes in and you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling like I need to go to this thing or meet this person, or, whatever it may be, I say just like lean in and listen to that, because that's when the most like magical things happen. Like I would have never got my light language activated, or like, or maybe it probably would have came around in some other way, because you don't ever miss what's for you. But
ooh, I like that. You never miss what's for you.
You don't. I have to keep reminding myself that too. Like you might take the long way around, take the gravel road scenery route behind the tractor.
Top down.
But you're never going to miss what's for you. You really aren't. And so I just think, and also, don't get so caught up in like the next thing to heal, or the next circle to sit in, or the next like meditation or whatever, because like at the end of the day, it's just you and being and just like going back to nature and like the simple things. And just, yeah, really just lately, it's just like, wow, everything is energy and everything is connected and I am you and you are me. And like, you can get real lost in that rabbit hole, but
in the best possible way.
In the best possible way.
Yeah.
Just the connectedness of everything and everyone.
So speaking of not what's next, but what is next for you? I heard you say something about a training, like a sex integration coaching, is that what you said?
Yes. As long as I'm a little behind on my coursework right now, shocker. But Lord willing, I complete the certification. It's a year-long certification. It's integrative sex coaching. And I would love to take that and kind of bring it in to what I'm doing and someday have my own little practice that's just like a little holistic women's healthcare practice that's kind of coupled with like integrative sex coaching and yoni steaming, maybe some yoni casting and just like some fun stuff, but also like, you know, gentle paps, IUD removals, like maybe throw some light language in there. I went to a workshop last weekend and learned some really cool things that I'm like, oh, I would really love to bring that into practice too.
Yeah, because you're gathering.
I'm gathering
all of these things. You're in this season
I'm gathering.
Of gathering.
I don't know what Guided with Grace looks like, honestly. I don't know what I'm doing, honestly. If we're being honest, I have no idea.
Well, congratulations.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of just out here blundering around. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'm super excited to see what the future holds for you because I'm certainly enjoying the present and being with you, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and hang with us, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me and getting me out of my shell.
Yeah. Well,
Really
you
important.
deserve to be highlighted.
Thank you.
You really do.
Thank you.
And I hope you receive that.